Okay, so between 1922 and 1924, Joseph Stalin is using that ability to appoint party officials to slowly gain power secretly over the government. And in 1924, Lenin dies, the leader of Russia dies after having multiple strokes. He was suffering from strokes for quite some time before his death. And in his last will, which is read to the communist government in Russia, he outlines a concern that he has. He has a worry that after he's dead, there will be a rival battle between uh, members of the government for control and for to be his next replacement of the leader of the Communist Party. And he's 1,000,000% right. That's exactly what happens. But interestingly enough, Lenin actually calls out Joseph Stalin in his will and testament. He says that Stalin is a dangerous politician, that he is power hungry, that he lacks caution, and that he is ruthless. And he actually asks the government upon his death to sack Joseph Stalin as the general secretary of the Soviet Union. As an example to show just how powerful Stalin is, Stalin doesn't respond to this accusation in Lenin's will and testament. Instead, what he does is he calls his loyal officials and he tells them to dismiss Lenin's will and testament because it's the mad mind of a deranged person after having so many strokes. So, despite the fact that the leader of Russia has asked to sack Stalin, Stalin convinces the government that they shouldn't sack him. So, Stalin keeps his job. As you can imagine, Trotsky does actually take over the leadership of the Soviet Union. Not necessarily in the same way that Lenin did, but he's certainly seen as the person in charge of the communist Russia. But Trotsky has enemies. That's what makes him different to Lenin. Lenin didn't have many enemies that fought him, but Trotsky had many. One of them is Stalin, but another one is a man called Bukharin, who we'll learn about more next lesson. So Trotsky is now engaged in a political battle with Stalin. It's like a battle of the opposites. You've got the flamboyant, openly spoken, amazing speaker Trotsky, and you've got the quiet, intelligent, conniving Stalin going head to head to see who will rule, who will be the next ruler of Russia. Unfortunately for Trotsky, the worst thing happens when you're engaged with a battle against someone like Stalin, in that he gets ill. He gets increasingly sick, and over the space of about a year or two, he is sick for about 5 or 6 months and he's completely unable to work. Stalin uses his power to manipulate the people in government to essentially say that Trotsky is so sick and so ill that he can't run the army, he can't run any of these positions. So until he's better, we should just give those positions to somebody else. And that's exactly what happens in 1925. Trotsky has his powers over the army, navy, and air force completely removed. So because of his illness, Stalin has managed to tick Trotsky's power over the military and get rid of it. But Trotsky is still far more powerful than Stalin. He is still the number one figure in Russia. And Trotsky is outspoken. He can speak to the people. Stalin is more quiet. So many people don't even know who Joseph Stalin is. They've never heard him speak. So Joseph Stalin, he needs to find an issue. He needs to be able to find a battle in which Trotsky can lose all his power, all his credibility, and he finds it. And when he does, he attacks viciously like a dog. And the reason he attacks is over an issue called world revolution versus socialism in one country. And what this debate is about is, should Russia, as the only communist country in the world, should it promote revolutions of communism across the world, or should it just focus on communism in Russia? Trotsky is an avid reader of Marx, and he is a big believer in this world revolution, the sort of workers of the world unite. And Stalin disagrees. Whether he disagrees because he actually believes it, or whether he disagrees just to fight against Trotsky, we're not sure. But what Stalin does is, again, he doesn't say a word. but he gets the loyal party members to say it for him. They form what's called the new opposition to start to Trotsky, and they go to the government and they say, look, socialism for one country is much better, and world revolution is dangerous. They feel it's dangerous because if Russia is poking its business in America, in Britain, France, and China, eventually one of these countries is going to get annoyed and it's going to declare war on Russia. Russia will lose this war and then communism will be defeated. So it seems like the best thing to do is just ignore the rest of the world and focus on Russia until it becomes more powerful. And this sort of kind of plays out and it's back and forth and no one really wins. Until 1927, Trotsky puts a lot of energy into China. He travels to China, he sends people to China, and he tries to create a communist party in China to rise up and to be a new communist country. And it fails drastically. America, Britain, and France, they fight this communist uprising and it completely fails. And Trotsky looks silly. It looks like this world revolution idea is not only not going to work, but is increasingly dangerous. And the new opposition, secretly led by Stalin, asks Trotsky to leave the Communist Party. And from November 1927, Trotsky is no longer a powerful man in Russia. He's no longer even a member of the Communist Party. He's living in exile. So, in the space of 3 years, Stalin has managed to completely get rid of his main opponent, Leon Trotsky.